Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 91 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host. With me, as always, is the energetic Darick Oswald. Darick, how does it feel to have the power?
I don't have the power. I don't have the energy. I am drained, literally and metaphorically. It has been. It's been a week.
Yeah, tell me about it. So we both had our struggles. Mine were probably a lot easier to deal with in a lot of ways. I was in New Orleans for an outdoor wedding in New Orleans, Louisiana in August. Spoiler alert, fuck that. Just nope. If anybody ever says, hey, I need you to be at my wedding, it's in New Orleans, outdoors in August, I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're your best friend. I don't care if they're your brother, sister, cousin, nephew, aunt, uncle, mother, father. I don't care if it's Jesus fucking Christ themselves. If that happens, you say no. You put your foot down. I've been
to New Orleans in the middle of July. I had to be there for work. And while I did have a wonderful time, it was, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it was hot and it was wet, but I was also like hot against my will, even inside with AC on, and wet against my will because the humidity and everything just clings to you.
Oh, it's soul crushing.
And I'm pointing this out because my experience was about a decade ago now, and the climate has not gotten any better since I've been there. So I can't like fathom what you just did. Like, this is, the hottest summer of the hottest year on record since we started tracking it.
Yep. It was fairly miserable as far as heat and humidity goes. Obviously you're still in New Orleans, like, right? There's still stuff. It's still a fascinating town. It's an expensive town, by the way. So everybody that was in Vegas, don't feel like you missed, that I missed out on spending a bunch of money, because New Orleans isn't cheap. And it was, quite honestly, there's a lot of really cool stuff. There's a ton of history, which is, for somebody that's very nerdy with history like I am, that's a big fucking deal. I absolutely love that shit. I was drinking at Lafitte's blacksmith shop, for God's sake. So a place where pirates used to go and parlay during the golden age of piracy. Like, that's super cool shit. And we don't have that, obviously, in the Midwest, because people just kind of, even back then, people just kind of drove through here on their way west in their covered wagons. So, we've been a flyover state for the entire time.
While I hate the term, what you have in the Midwest, as far as anything like that goes, is just what layman's refer to as an Indian burial ground.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's it. All the Midwest has to offer in terms of like historical fun stuff is just the plot to Salem's Lot. That's it. No. Yeah. Pet Cemetery.
Cemetery. Yeah. Up in my hometown, there's actually a Romani graveyard that you cross the threshold of that graveyard and you get chills. It's like, whoa, okay, all right. I mean, I don't even believe in that shit. And it's just like, oh, okay, I shouldn't be here. I'm going to leave now.
I like to joke. Maybe it is because I'm from the Midwest, and every time I learn anything about our history, like anytime at all, it's just the persecution and genocide of natives. And so
that's
my running joke. My pretty much. My running bit for a while was that the movie Poltergeist is actually American history. I mean, like, we shouldn't be here. We're haunted. It's built on the cemetery. It's built on bodies. And it's like, that's America. Like, that's
sort of all of it. Sorry.
Oh,
that's uncomfortable.
Yep.
Did you do anything in Flesh and Blood? I guess I didn't even ask. I assumed.
Well, first, before we get to the flesh and blood part, I just need to point out that I was not in Vegas. I was not in New Orleans, and yet I also had a very expensive weekend because it turns out if you buy a bunch of groceries in this post-inflation world, and then you lose power for 5 days in the middle of the hottest summer of the hottest year on record since we started counting, you lose all those groceries. And then also, when you, instead of losing a bunch of money, you were actually expecting to make money. So like the reason I didn't go to Vegas was because I was supposed to be casting a Battle Spirits event remotely, but I was, paid gig 2 days, the whatever. Turns out you can't cast when you have no power either. So I didn't make money there, and then threw out a bunch of money, except for the cereal I forced myself to eat on Saturday, and then gave myself food poisoning. But I was like being stubborn. I was like, I don't want it to go to waste, and it was already too late. So anyway, I had an expensive weekend as well. Not nearly as fun though. But I did get to do some stuff in Flesh and Blood. I got to play in my armory this past week because Wampa wasn't recording on Wednesday. So I did get to attend. I thought I was going to say no, one, for the bit, and then two, because I did not do well. Played awful. But
I mean, you haven't played in like a while.
Part of it, well, physically, right? It's been a lot of Talishar. So part of it is I made some misplays, just like missed triggers, brain fart against Ken, where like if I do one turn different, the game goes wildly different, and instead I like just punted hard. But it wasn't even just that. Part of it was also I took a different version of Uzuri that was untested, because I thought to myself that with ProQuest season coming up in October, I'm actually really looking forward to it, and I'm going to do my best to play in as many of them as I can locally. And I wanted to kind of get a jump start on testing. And so sometimes what I do when I am making a decision, because like I already have a Bravo list that I'm comfortable with. Like if I have to go to an event tomorrow and I was like money on the line or whatever, I would just play that because I've got reps and I actually feel very good about that list currently. But I want to play Uzuri. And so I was like, all right, so here's what I'm going to do. There's like 3 different ways to play her right now, and I don't know which one I like the most. And also, based on some of the Uzuri lists that have done well recently, there are also some interesting, at least I think, tech choices that you can include in your lists, right? In Birmingham, we had Sensor pop up, and Give and Take has been popping up a bit.
Yep.
So that you can get back some of your, key cards or get the free 1 damage, et cetera, et cetera. And so I said to myself, well, sometimes the best way to test what you like and what you don't like about, things like that is to literally just play them all. So I admittedly was not playing a refined list, but I wouldn't even describe it as a refined list. I was playing a list that like my blue count was off because I was trying to cram in a bunch of stuff, mostly because I just wanted to see what it felt like to like play them and go through the situations. And I admittedly, again, I did not do well in the win and loss column, but I felt like I learned a lot. I've honed in on a blue count that I think I'm going to be good with going forward. I think I prefer the more mid-rangey one. Because I had like a smattering when I was sideboarding, like one game I was able to go super aggressive and basically try like the drip drop Dando list. And then in another game, I tried like the more mid-rangey value oriented one. And I think that's the one I feel like is best right now. But yeah, basically I tried a bunch of things. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. It was just nice to like actually play Flesh and Blood. I took Stark with me, and I love Stark, but he was very bored, and so he was also very pushy the entire time. I had a couple of folks. Yeah, I had a couple of it was like extra bad, that worse than like you saw him at Gen Con where he was like fine, but he was also just very excited because it was Gen Con. This was like Stark was just not having it. So, I had one person say to me a few times, like, you have a lot of patience. And it's like, well, I mean, yes, because my kid, I can't escape him. So of course I'm used to it.
Right.
This is what you sign up for. But yeah, so all of those things considered, it's not like I expected to do well anyway, but it was not a great performance, but I did enjoy it and I had a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to ProQuest season. This is also my quick call out to Flake. because he had said in the past, if I ever wanted to do like real playtesting, he would put together a little group, assuming that they listen. I know that they don't because they have better things to do. But Nick Bolas, Flexi Lexi,
Neon shorts,
neon shorts, douchebag, we're due, buttcock, etc. If you want to play test, or Mara, I've heard she likes some playtest folks, etc. I'd be down to jam some games here in the near future because I think I want to try to qualify for this ProQuest.
You also have myself, because I also would like to qualify.
Yeah, I just assumed that because you actually have like a local scene that you would just like test with Dagon and them, but
no, Dagon is bought and paid for by Ascent and MinMax, so he a lot of the time is not hyper available to do things, and that was not a fair characterization. That was me giving him shit, but he does have a group that is much more proficient in a lot of ways than I would be. The other thing is, like, we have a lot to talk about with the ProQuest season as well that we just don't exactly know yet, because there's a wide swath of things that could be true and untrue for that ProQuest season. But let's rewind it a bit. Talk Vegas, because a lot went on. Coverage was excellent. I know you missed it. Coverage was excellent. Shout out to our boy Flake, who I guess somebody saw him walking. I don't know if you caught this because of your power outages and lack of social media, but as he was walking in Vegas, somebody yelled out, "Oh my God, is that Matt DeMarco, the author of The Stoic?"
I did see that, yes, and that filled me with such joy.
Yeah, that got me.
Pure joy.
I was so excited.
It was a beacon of light in those dark times.
Because you didn't have lights.
Right. I did do my best to try to keep up on stuff. I have to go back and like watch coverage proper, if that makes sense. I caught some clips, but I was trying to save battery power, a lot of it. So pretty much like when I would do my check-ins, it was like every 4 to 5 hours just to let people know I was alive. And then I would like speed skim through as much info as I could and then go back. Right. So like,
yeah. Yep.
I knew Breyer got LL'd, I knew who won. I was rooting for Charles because I know him from other games and he's a fantastic guy and a great player. And yeah, I know I'm jumping ahead here, but
you are, and that's normal.
Yeah.
Yes. So coverage was excellent. I really do want to give a quick specific shout out to both Sam O'Byrne and Ethnic Smoke, as it were. They both were great. I thought that they performed incredibly well in front of the cameras with the action. They didn't miss a beat. There was no visible or perceived nervousness. They were just excited to be there and excited to get in the booth. So hats off to you two. And they're in there with 3 people that we know are, well, 2.5 people that we know are absolute pros at doing.
Yeah, I mean,
this.
They're in there with literal game dev and author of The Stoic.
Yeah, about to say the author of The Stoic, and the guy that likes anime a lot.
Yeah.
So sorry, Kellen. That was a shot. You don't listen. I guess I don't need to apologize. Yes. So we had our new U.S. national champion is Charles Dunn, playing what we in locally have always called Beefy Breyer. That's what we called it when Dagon had a similar version he was playing in Indianapolis at the calling there. It's also just Fatigue Breyer. No, there's no surprise that Charles Dunn was playing a Fatigue deck. Actual 0. It just turns out that that the deck was in a good spot. A lot of people had sort of had kind of skirted at that, had said, well, maybe, and Charles took that maybe, turned it into reality, and then went and knocked Rosetta Thorn out of Classic Constructed in a deck with a deck that did not play Rosetta Thorn. What a beautiful way to go. So Breyer, good night, sweet princess. You will be missed. We'll see you on the other side. which will just be the Living Legend format. But yeah, it was a very fascinating top 8. We had 2 Briar, 3 Lexi, 2 Icelander, and a Dromai. And the semifinals were about the biggest dichotomy you could ever find in matches of Flesh and Blood. And so I would, anybody who hasn't watched, I would highly encourage going back and watching. But it's funny to me that looking at this top 8 and with some of the other results over the weekend, that, you know, one, we know that a full quarter of this top 8 hero representation wise is gone as soon as the next the next Living Legend reset hits. So we know that Briar is just gone. We also have some outside shots at other things, specifically taking a look at Lexi, because Yuki Lee Bender won the calling in Las Vegas on Lexi. And Lexi's got kind of a lot of Living Legend points super early in this, but 100 of those came from that calling. Like, be reasonable and fair. So let's walk it back a little bit and go back to the national championship here. Was there anything surprising to you?
I don't know that I would say surprising. I mean, the top 8, like if you trade one of those Briars for a Bravo, it's pretty close to what I had suggested or thought it was going to be when we went back to our previous broadcast. Like top 8 was pretty close. I did expect like one Bravo in there. There was the one Bravo that ended up in the calling, so I still feel a little vindicated there. No, I mean, I'm not super surprised. I mean, the biggest surprise is probably just that Fatigue Briar won it all. And it's mostly because not that the deck isn't capable of winning, and certainly not in the hands of Charles. Charles is a phenomenal player. If you're not familiar, he's top 8 at a number of other events already. Did very well on Oldhim in the past, so he knows the Fatigue game plan. Like I said, I know him from other games. I don't even remember where we first met. Maybe it was Dota Underlords, maybe it was Artifact, but I just remember like the first time it clicked for me at a Flesh and Blood event when he said something to me about, we exchanged something on Twitter or whatever, and it clicked for me that he's Tin Man, because I know him from like when I covered esports and video games, and so I'm used to his username Tin Man. And so I was like, oh my god, like you're Tin Man. So like he is very successful in other games, has competed professionally in other games, works in game design. I believe he's currently like a class designer for Diablo 4 or something like that. Yep. So knows his stuff. So am I shocked when you consider all of those facts? Not really. But the thing that surprises me the most, and the reason why I think Charles deserves like all of the credit, is that he knew going into that weekend he was going to be piloting Fatigue Briar every round and have to then put up with the mental fatigue of doing so. And that is one of the hardest things to prepare for at an event, in my opinion, because even when you're doing playtesting stuff, a lot of times it's like, 2, maybe 3 games in a testing night or something.
Yep.
You're not doing like timed, 7, 8, 9 round days like you do at an event. And then you're not doing it across multiple days while in Vegas, where everyone else also wants you to hang out. There's all the flashing lights, all the fun, like just going into that with the mindset of there's the strong potential that every one of my matchups are going to be a slog and I'm going to be fine. Right. That to me it's just such a big balls move. Like that. There's no other way for me to put it. Like he just said, all right, I can do this. And he did. So
yep.
To me, if anything, that's the surprise. It's not so much the outcome or the player. It's just like, even though it's such a good player and even though the archetype I think is entirely viable, still doing it and doing it so consistently is what's impressive to me.
Yeah, that was the big takeaway for me. I know that we've had conversations before where we talk about heroes winning events, and it's not heroes that win events, it's players. Players take heroes to win events, granted, and heroes are assigned points, but so are players. Charles Dunn has been consistent the entire time he's played Flesh and Blood. He always is in, towards the top when it comes to bigger tournaments. He's always well prepared. Uh, Basically, that part didn't shock me at all. I thought that he played magnificently every time that I was able to watch him play. And there's a lot of things I think that people can learn about the game of Flesh and Blood, not about piloting a specific deck, from watching his performance. It was truly exceptional. It's similar to when we talked about I believe it was the second, Rhea Adams' second win on Icelander, where she basically had to play flawless to win against Dromai, and did. And that was, again, that goes in that same pantheon of clinic. Watch it. That will make you better. Just stopping and observing the lines and saying, I would do this, and then see what each of them do, and then kind of take a minute to understand, if your answer was something else, why they did what they did and where you would gain percentage by doing so. That is such a skill up when you're able to digest content that way. And going back to the content guys, they did such a good job of explaining things and talking through it that it doesn't detract, it just helps. So I'd implore you, if you're looking at getting better, if you're looking at a good way to skill up, go watch the content from Vegas. Truly exceptional. And there's nothing that surprised me in either of the calling or US Nats. Both of those were sort of as expected. It was always going to be, in my mind, at least 3 Lexi, 3 and 4. Azalea kind of still feels DOA. Warmongers is just, it's so bad for that deck. I figured, okay, there's going to be heroes piloting Briar and Nats. Maybe we get 1 through, we got 2. The calling, I figured there would be no Briars, because I thought that a lot of people would be discouraged if they didn't perform well in in Nats and then went into play the calling. They would come off of Briar. I'm a little surprised by the Azuri, mainly because that's a lot to fight through for an Azuri to make it to the top tables, even at a calling, which was a pretty large calling. So that surprised me maybe the most. But overall, I thought that this is, as far as hero spread goes, what I expected. And also as far as player spread goes, none of the names surprised me too much sitting in either top 8, or actually all 3 top 8s if you factor the Battle Harden, which was won by Michael Fang. Like, sometimes players win games. That's just all there is to it. So, yeah, I wasn't too surprised by any of that. I am happy that we finally can end the long national nightmare, well, I guess international nightmare, of Briar existing in the classic constructed format, because then now you don't have to stop and go, well, yeah, but I need at least AB whatever for Thorn. We can just let that go. That can go away now.
Oh, now it's, I need AB whatever for Kano.
No one people just let Kano exist, and then there will be a weekend where everybody goes, Briar. I'm not worried about Rune Chance, and Briar's gone, so AB 0, let's go, and they're gonna get Icelander and Kano'd.
So here is my legitimate train of thought, right? If Icelander also continues to do well, there's a chance that she could potentially L at some point in the future. when that happens, if we don't have another wizard or something by then, it will be open season for Kano and Viserai and Vinset, because it will be the forgot about Dre, but instead of Dre, it'll be Arcane Barrier.
Right. I mean, we used to use the forgot about Dre reference in Magic when talking about Dredge, because that was a deck that utilized the graveyard to do just hugely powerful, way above rate, like 3x Jordan Kennedy above rate things in turns, because it utilized the graveyard as a resource. And the graveyard's a very easy thing to take care of in Magic. There are cards that just literally nuke the graveyard. But if Dredge didn't put up results for X number of weeks or X number of events, people would be like, nobody's going to play Dredge, I'm good. Or Reanimator was another one. And it's like, nah, we're good. We don't have to worry about it. And then somebody would recognize it, make the meta call to play one of those decks, and to just run roughshod on an entire event. And that very well could happen here too, where it's like, I don't need AB. And then Kano's like, oh, good. That sounds great. Let's murder you. So that is a definite thing. And typically decks that are going to want to play Oasis Respite to begin with are going to be the ones that sort of can survive that. But and also Chain and Blitz kind of feels like a problem now, but we'll leave that for another day. But yikes.
Yeah.
Big shout out to at Vishra on Twitter. I just found this yesterday and then dug it back up today. They've put together a running Google Doc of all of the acquired living legend points from all of the national competitions going on throughout the world. And spectacular.
Vishra, I know Vishra from other games I've covered as well. So I think I first ran into him like very early Gwent days because I did a very short stint there, but I think I know him most from like Legends of Runeterra, but he's done a bunch of the like digital card games. So now that he's made the jump to Flesh and Blood, it's going to be another like great addition to the community.
Yeah, so I noticed this. So big shout out there for getting this doc together. So Lexi pulled down 246 points this weekend, but 100 of that comes from the callings. A little bit of a grain of salt, but that's a lot still. And so that's going to take Lexi to 658. We're getting to striking distance. We have Dromine and Kano both had 52. Those were the next closest. We're 52. 246, 52. Not counting Briar because, well, who cares? But, and then Dash and Icelander both had 50. So right now, kind of our watch points are Lexi at 658 and Icelander at 812. Icelander needs not a lot to get over the line. And Lexi would need quite a bit. There are 502 possible points left in that season. Lexi would need half of them to go out. Icelander would need about 40%. So I don't think we lose either of them personally. But do you think we could see movement there?
I mean, I think we'll see movement for sure. They'll get at least some points, but I don't think we're going to lose them. I think that there's a chance that we might lose Lexi in the ProQuest season. And depending on when they calculate and publish those totals, that may or may not impact Worlds. That's more what I'm keeping an eye on. Yep, I feel like because the ProQuest season is technically October to November, though, that I don't think they're going to take that into account ahead of Worlds, just because if they did, then players would only have like a week or whatever to scramble. And I just historically haven't seen LSS do stuff like that. So probably safe, but that is another thing that I'm kind of keeping my eye on is the ProQuest season, because I do think that there's a chance we lose at least one of them after that.
Yeah. So I'm looking, it's possible to lose one of the two. I don't think we lose either. But I also wouldn't rule out a shakeup prior to Worlds, but with Bright Lights being the most recent set when Worlds occurs, you're looking at no real replacements for some of the things that we've already lost and will lose. So as an example, there are 0 Earth heroes in the game in Classic Constructed now. They're just gone.
Yeah.
So every one of those cards is shadow banned until you have probably a fucking Earth Brute. But until you have something to replace them, that's got to be something that LSS has to keep in mind, right? Like they have to be thinking about that. And
I think that, like, if I'm being honest, I think that they probably have been thinking about it since Starvo.
Sure.
And I think that Dusk Till Dawn was their first foray into kind of like righting those wrongs. And that as we hit these cycles, it's hard because you don't necessarily know which heroes are going to catch fire that way. And your dev time is so far in the future that unless you have a crystal ball, you might not have something right away. But it would not surprise me if we go, Bright Lights, and then if the supplemental set after that doesn't have something with Earth in it, then I would expect the next 1 to 2 sets would.
We're supposed to have draft as far as the sets go.
Oh, is it? Well,
for our next 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. No, I know that. So I guess what I mean is it's Bright Lights and then the next set. And if the next set wasn't one where they were planning on revisiting the elements, then that next supplemental is what I meant, right? The same way we did Dusk Till Dawn, because we saw Chain and Prism go. It wouldn't shock me if they do something for there to revisit Aria. We'll call it, for lack of a better term, we'll call it Everfest 2.0. But I think that they've already, like, Dusk Till Dawn to me was a set that I saw as a response to Starvo, as weird as that sounds. I think that they saw that and they were like, hey, we need to have a plan for when some of these really like popular heroes and stuff phase out, because Starvo hit like wildfire. And at the time when that was happening, but because again, when they started that conversation, I bet that it probably wasn't even in their idea that like Starvo would go that fast.
No,
but they were probably looking at the existing, LL points at that time. And if you remember, like after the early days, it was Chain and Prism, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, like that was when they said to themselves, okay, well, we need to have, an answer or something. And then we got Dusk Till Dawn. So
I also saw a very interesting comment, to me at least, from Manorcast, so Roger Bodie and Michael Hamilton, about how the greatest threat to Classic Constructed is a Living Legend format, because people do glue themselves to heroes. And so if your hero has achieved Living Legend and there's a format you can keep playing them, that's what you'll play.
Yeah. So here there are 3 reasons why I don't buy this. Okay. First, the joke reason, which is the greatest threat to Classic Constructed is climate change, and we're all going to die long before that's a problem. All right.
Yeah.
Now
that belongs in the Kicker Guards Corner channel of the Discord.
So now, real reason number 1 that I don't like that statement or argument or viewpoint or whatever is that I could say that Blitz is the greatest threat to Classic Constructed because there's no Kasai adult heroes. And I've got a friend who just really loves Kasai and he plays her all the time. And because he loves and he's really attached to that hero, he just doesn't play any other Flesh and Blood. But you and I both know that that's a lie, right? Because you just play something else in the other formats. Like we all play multiple formats. We already have multiple formats. So the existence of yet another format, I don't think is going to impact those things. And so my third answer is, and the reason I don't like that, and this is also another more serious real answer, is that I think it's actually the opposite. I think that if you don't have a living legend format, you have a harder time retaining your players, because you're going to have some people who are not hyper competitive, not, the Michael Hamiltons and Michael Fangs and other Michaels.
Yeah, right.
Right?
People named Michael.
People named Michael, Jordan, whatever.
Dagan Michael White.
Yeah. You're not going to have those people that are just going to like buy into whatever hero they need to go spike some tournament. You're going to have some people who still like to be competitive, but also will identify with a hero. And because maybe they've got limited budgets, limited time, a number of possible options, they might be hesitant to buy into the game or invest into the game. And not even just from a money standpoint, but invest their time, right? Their energy. If they feel like, hey, once my hero LLs and there's now no format for them, I'll never get to play that again. Like, why do I care? Right. So I do think that it's the opposite. I think that if there was no living legend format, then you would have a hard time replacing players as other ones, like their hero ends and then they leave. And so now you've got a retention problem, and a retention problem for your game is also a threat to your game. So the threat to Classic Constructed is really just about player support. The reality is, and here's another point of view, actually. This one's off the cuff. Didn't even have time to think about this, but I'm a limited first guy. I love draft. I love sealed, right? I'm still playing Flesh and Blood though. And, and my point here is this, whatever events LSS decides to put the emphasis on, there's gonna, like, that's what's gonna have the support, right? Living legend format might be a thing, but if LSS treats them the way that they've treated Blitz in the past, I'm not saying now, but Blitz in the past, draft in the past, if they treat Living Legend the way they treat Ultimate Pit Fighter, it's not a threat to Classic Constructed at all.
No.
So
it was a good conversation point, because in a good exercise, I agree with all your points. I don't think it is. If I'm stopping and thinking about it, I think about every other card game I've ever played, all of them. And I never, unless the card game only had one format, I never played only one format of a card game. Just full stop. So as long as there was anything else, I played that as well as whatever the main thing was, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera down the line, right? My first match of Flesh and Blood ever was draft. I think my second one was CC, and I think my third one was Blitz. Like I was just going to play the game. How I played it, irrelevant. I do think that there is identity, and we've talked about this any number of times as well, tied from people to person to hero. For certain people, they just find that one thing that they really love. But in a lot of ways, the next thing comes around, like, it's not like they can't do something else. A good example being Mara Ferris, who Prism stan. That deck was completely blinged out, extended art heralds, everything else. Prism goes to the wayside. She didn't stop. She went and found the next thing that spoke to her, and it just happened to be another fucking cop. But this time a cop with dragons. So that's been her jam since. So it's cyclical. I don't think there is a threat. As long as something is the tentpole format that holds up the game, and that's what they kind of put their money into promoting, that's never going to be threatened by an ancillary format. Like, it just isn't.
So hear me out. Here's what I expect to be in the future, right? We had Mara on Prism, aka Angel Cop. Now she's on Dragon Cop. At some point, Dromai is going to go away, but we have got this new Bright Light set coming, all mechanologists.
RoboCop?
Yep, she's going to have RoboCop. Listen, because we got 3. We know one's going to be the Evos, and we already have Dash. What if there's another one where it's just a bunch of like items, and it plays in a very similar play style, whether you animate them, you make your little tiny robots, right? Or whatever. She'll end up playing it, and it'll be RoboCop.
As long as we can get to Maniac Cop at some point.
Also,
which is a
listen,
deep cut.
here's the thing. If there was ever a player in the Flesh and Blood community that I could see shooting somebody in the dick, it's Mara Ferris.
I don't know what to do with that.
Nothing, because you know I'm right.
Sure. I'm beyond the ability to. Yep, sounds great. Mara's just shooting dicks, just lining them up and firing away. Like, that's just what's happening. Dick shooter.
I'd buy that for $1.
I'd buy that for $1. Wow. Okay. Well, we finally got there. I was wondering why we're so on the rails. It didn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
now we have Mara Ferris just lining up the competition, taking out a Magnum and just blowing dicks off.
RoboCop, gay icon RoboCop Mara Ferris shooting people in the dick.
Well. Oh my God. There's gonna be, if our podcast influences or creates fan fiction, man, there's gonna be some Rule 34 shit happening with this episode.
If only we knew an artist that could make that happen.
If only we knew an artist that could depict Mara Ferris blowing dicks off. If only. Who do we have? I can't even think of one.
Not a single one.
Not a single one. As we've kind of talked about already, because Darick can't, stay in order. I do make show notes for a reason. No, I don't. I don't know why I do it. I think I do it so I can have like some artifact of sequence, I guess. But it's all contextual. Anyway, we do get a ProQuest season, so all the bitching that I was doing like a week ago has already been made null and void because now I have fucking something to prepare for.
Yep.
So every goddamn time that I bitch about something, maybe I just can't keep bitching.
That's all I have to say.
LSS. Thanks for listening. So marketing materials didn't give us firm dates, but it looks like late October, early November, maybe even through November. It's kind of hard to parse. We don't know yet, and no word on formats. So Bright Lights will be out. I could see draft being an option for some of these, much like it was for RTN's last year, right?
I'm going to be fully transparent here. I am praying that there are at least a couple of Bright Lights drafts in this Pro Quest season, just because with it being a big part of Worlds and then also being part of the calling at Worlds that I'm planning on participating in, I would love a more, high stakes environment to do that kind of testing ahead of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because draft is also one of the formats for the 20K brawl or the 20K invitational brawl in Columbus.
Now who's going out of order?
Oh, we're sequencing though. You see, that's not out of order. That's right. What the fuck are you talking about? C to D. C to D.
Cop to Dick. Yeah, we covered that.
Cop to Dick. Yeah. Cop to Dick. Yeah, that's exactly how that works. But we do know the formats for the 20K Invitational now. They were fed to us by a person that may or may not have some knowledge of the situation. But it looks like what we're going to get on day one of the Invitational is 4 rounds of Classic Constructed and 3 rounds of Blitz. So, okay. I'm liking that. That's great. Day 2 is 3 rounds of Draft, followed by 4 rounds of Classic Constructed, and the top 8 will also be Classic Constructed. So here we go with stuff to prepare for 2.0 here, because that's coming up in December 1st through 3rd in Columbus. That's spice. That's 3 formats. That's similar to the way that Worlds was last year. So how do you feel about Blitz being in the mix?
I'm a fan personally. I'm not anti-Blitz either.
I love playing Kasai,
this is going to sound weird, but I would even like at Worlds to see maybe just for one round, hear me out, once it's like pared down to top 32 or something, I would love to see them also have Ultimate Pit Fight be one of the rounds. You go and you split them up into like tables of either 4 or whatever, and then you get points based on like when you finish, right? So if like you win it, you get 4 points. If you come in second, you get third, blah blah blah. But I'm just a firm believer that like if you have a format in your game, you should support that format for your game. And if it's the World Championship, you should have to play in all of the formats at least once, personally.
So yeah, we could have had chess boxing or fab chess boxing, phone booth MMA with Flesh and Blood in between. We could have done a lot of different things here. Like I'm surprised we're missing those. Although those could be side events, you never know. I mean,
Yeah,
it is a realm event. There easily could be any of those. We just don't know.
I'm just saying, you know, the Realm Championship needs to have every format. But also the World Championship. I stand by this. I still think LSS needs to, in the World Championship, also bring back Blitz. I wasn't one of the anti-Blitz folks. I know that this opinion is going to be hated, but I don't care. Bring back Blitz and do one round where you split them up into like tables of 4 and do Ultimate Pit Fight. Give me the spectacle.
Give me the juice. Like, I want to see what people can do when they have to consider the politics of a UPF game.
I was going to say, imagine like that's your top 8 for the World Championship is just 8 people at one multiplayer game.
Yeah, one pod of UPF, just 8 players who's out trying to out-politic each other.
Listen, here's why I laugh at this, because I just want to say the words, right? Like, and here is, author of the Stoic, Matt DeMarco, as your world champion, winning on Genus What You Need. Like,
how did it feel to give him that shitty Christmas present, Matt?
How did it feel to use your silver palms to...
My God.
I need the spectacle in my life.
It would probably be, if it's Matt DeMarco, it'd be on Taipanus. Let's be fair here.
Yeah.
For reasons that I'm not going to get into.
Well, I mean, we've seen his office background, right? When he films podcasts and does shows. He's an ass man. We know his type is anus, so he's on Type Anus.
Type Anus. He is a danger at a buffet. Yeah. But there's also a 10K brawl, classic instructor brawl on Saturday, a 5K team sealed on Sunday. Those will qualify for the 50K Invitational next year. There will also be several other card games represented for different events. Alpha Clash will be represented. I believe that there's a Pokemon event, if I do recall. So there'll be a lot of things going on, regardless if you're not interested in being there for Flesh and Blood. Although you still listen to the show, I'm confused, but whatever. That's not the fucking first time I've been confused by something. See Type Anus. But it's honestly there's a huge cosplay contest, so this is going to be a giant spectacle and the best party of the year. So I know Vegas was a thing. I get it, but I do believe that this will be the best party of the year. That's my personal opinion. I'll be there.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I wasn't in Vegas. I'll be there. I won't be in Barcelona, sadly, but was also sad to not be in Vegas too, to be completely fair. I was very
sad to not be in Vegas, especially because there was no reason for me to be at home.
Oh yeah, you were. I mean, outside of the fact that I'm pretty sure if you were out enjoying yourself in Vegas while your family was in misery in Michigan, that you would have felt awful.
I mean, yeah.
You're you have to accept the label every now and again of being a good person.
Sorry. I don't have to do anything.
That's true. I'm not your dad. He's in Missouri somewhere. But you want to do some listener questions? I know I talked shit last week, and so they flooded us this week. You want to do some of those?
Yeah, I think we should do some of those. I haven't seen us this flooded since, DTW this weekend, but...
Yeah, y'all got some rain, that's for sure. This was actually a question that I missed because I was pretty well hammered when I was trying to put together show notes last week, and I missed that there was a listener question. So my apologies, Bladestorm 413, also 413, like shouldn't at least be 420. but this was a question from the week prior. On a note from the pod, what if Flesh and Blood did a tournament at Worlds, because you'd need a lot of participants, where they picked 8 heroes and they all had a pod of mirrors, and the top player from each goes into a top 8?
Yeah, what if? It's a great question.
I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be super entertaining, especially if you just if everybody was randomly assigned a hero.
I don't want to beat this horse to death, but after they do this, when each one of them wins, then the next top 8, where it's one of each of the heroes, has to be UPF.
You just want to see pit fights.
I do now.
Just want everything to be a pit fight.
I spent 5 days in the dark. I want to pit fight everything right now.
Oh, now you think you were born in the darkness. I
was molded by it.
Jesus Christ. You're RoboCop, not Bane. You fuckhead. I think that's really interesting. I think pods of mirrors would be fascinating. Or even if you just had tournaments, right? Like, you just had separate tournaments for each hero, and then they fed into a
I will say this would be kind of a fun event. So every now and then you'll see them on social media where they'll do like the meetups, and it's always like a billion people all named the same thing, right? Like there's Michael. The meeting of the Ryans and Kyles and whatever. So
the meeting of the Michaels, we just call them Flesh and Blood top 8s.
Yeah. So it'd be kind of cool if, some place was just like, once every month, right? Because you got 12 months in a year, that's enough to give you enough variety. But like just like once every month, you're like, hey, we're gonna do, meeting of the dashes, and everybody brings dash, and we just figure out, who's the dash champion.
I mean, that's great. I love it.
Totally. I just think that'd be like just like a fun, even if it's just like an LGS local thing or whatever. I do think that would be a good time. And if you really want to help with like new player engagement, because maybe this is a great way to get people to try heroes they've never tried before, or if they're new to the game and they don't know, like maybe make it commoner.
Oh, sure.
Like, have fun with it.
Yeah, you can do something like that. Next one's from Tiny 10 Hands. I still don't get that one. If you could pick any city/country in the world to host 2024 Fab Worlds, where would it be and why? The answer is Des Moines, Iowa, because it'd be in my backyard. But realistically, it's a great question. So a lot of it is seasonal. So like, let's say that Worlds is in December. Vegas is a great place in December because 1, it's not hot. And 2, the town is that is the non-convention season. So basically everywhere is wide open. Hotels are cheap. It's actually just quite easy to do in December. So that's a pretty good one for the US. If I were going to pick anywhere in the world, I would probably, I'd probably do Reykjavik because I just want to be in Iceland.
Pretty cool place.
Right. And I think that would be super sweet. I would also consider like Vancouver or Montreal.
Darick? Yeah, maybe not December.
No, it would have to be not December, but you'd have to do Worlds in like May.
Yeah. So, all right, because it's me. First answer is always a joke, right? So just got to answer. You can't be world champion unless it's truly worldwide. So you have to do it on the International Space Station. That's just upfront joke answer.
Well, but we've really wanted to do Flesh and Blood in space. Also, you could also say that it has to be done on international waters. Yeah,
that too. Bottom of the Mariana Trench. What could possibly go wrong? If it's good enough for billionaires, it's good enough for me. Here's the other answers. Selfish answer, much like Jordan. For me, it would be Detroit.
Did you fucking call me?
You heard me. We're talking about Michaels. We're talking about Michaels. Michael Jordan. Selfish. Ball hog. Keep up. So, I would say Detroit, because that's, close enough for me to drive. I think the city is very underrated. It's much better off than people give it credit for now. It's got actually some really cool convention spaces. Some of the best like Magic tournaments that I used to attend were at the Renaissance Center, like right downtown. And
By
I
Joe
just
Louis,
think,
right? Like,
yeah,
yep.
yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Like again, for the nightlife stuff, like there's casinos and whatever there. You got Ford Field right across the street from Comerica Park. The food is good, blah, blah, blah. Right. So that's like the selfish problem is like in December or even November, like November, you can get away with it. We sometimes have good weather, but December, you're really pushing it. Now, if I was going to say just like you can pick anywhere, now granted, I think that this one is difficult. This is one of those ones where unfortunately I think that the location might price people out, because it's a lot of travel to get there and the travel is expensive. But I think that the best place possible would be Auckland. Put it right in
Oh,
LSS's
sure.
backyard. It's December, so it's like good weather for them there. I'd love to visit New Zealand. Lots of cool stuff to see, but also think about like the downtime for the LSS folks, because if they don't have to worry about, making the
Travel.
production go
Yeah.
all across the world and they've got their travel stuff, like they can show you around or ignore you. Like that's up to them. But I just like, I think about when we talk to Alex and those guys, how cool would it be for them to like take you to the local joint, right? But just
Oh
like
man.
the atmosphere, right? You've built this game that is now, worldwide celebrated. People love it. They're traveling all over the globe for it. So at some point, I would like to see them like have a homecoming of sorts and just do their world championship there in Auckland so that they can like feel the love. But, like I feel like it's a good location. New Zealand would be a place that I would potentially pick even if LSS wasn't there, just because again, it's fantastic. But the fact that they are there as well, I think kicks it up a notch. If I was going to pick someplace not New Zealand, then my next one would be Japan.
Like, yeah, do it in Kyoto or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. That was also a thought. Um, Asia would be awesome. Like, it would be fantastic. Even if you did it in like the Philippines. The Philippines has such a strong card game community. And I also thought about doing it in like Sao Paulo, like do it in South America. And because they've picked up the game and have run with it. So there's a lot of answers to that question that make a lot of sense to me. But obviously, the selfish answer makes sense. I think that of the answers outside of the selfish answers, Auckland is the one I like the most, because yes, I think that would have, it'd be a super like almost emotional worlds for Flesh and Blood, because
Yeah.
it'd be, especially if at that point in time that the players did travel and it was as big as the other worlds had been. I mean, that would be like the perfect love letter, right? Like to the community to LSS.
Get
That
to
would
show off
be
your home, show off your
right.
city. And I don't know, like part of it is, I think of like wrestling storylines or football or basketball or whatever. There's just something special about a home game or a
Mm-hmm.
home like town match, right? There's all that extra emotion that charges a crowd. And I just really feel like, man, doing it right in their backyard would actually be really cool.
That'd be awesome. Like, I would absolutely love it. We got a pair from Vintox here, and they are directed at each of us, one apiece. We'll start with mine. At Logan, with Flesh and Blood being a unique IP that was very lore driven, Dust Till Dawn's release and subsequent season seems like it has been very light on lore. LSS pumped up the DTD set as being very story important at Pro Tour, but it feels like a letdown. Do you think we need more lore articles, and where do you think the story is going over the next year? So, I think that Flesh and Blood has an incredible intellectual property. I think the characters are compelling. I think the bones of a great story are there. I feel like they can kind of do whatever they want and it would probably work outside of one thing, and that's nothing. Doing nothing doesn't work. There are so many great opportunities right now to start capturing minds and capturing players and capturing eyeballs by having and fleshing out that IP, by having, you know, a graphic novel, by having a series, by having you know, action figures, by any by doing a little bit of advanced merchandising. I feel like sometimes they don't think they're ready for it yet, and I just disagree. One of the, as everybody on this place, you know, on this that listens to the show knows, we both have a lot of ins with Alpha Clash, and one of the things that attracted me to Alpha Clash was that they had a fleshed out IP. They had, you know, a backstory. They had a graphic novel out. They have a novel getting, you know, it's coming out, an actual novel coming out soon too, that the Kickstarter opens up in a couple weeks, I think. The hashtag no free ads. But honestly, I think what they need to do is they need to, in those seasons, like when that's going on, they need to have weekly lore pieces. This is something that Magic used to do, and it was incredible. Where every, you know, you'd have these weekly bursts from the mothership of like spoilers, you know, with the 2 months leading up to a set release, because this is before Magic released a set every 6 weeks or every 4 weeks or every 2 weeks, whatever it is now. And so they would start doing these, like, here's a card, and then give you the story, and then the next week they do it again. I think something like that would go a long ways towards giving us a more fleshed out thing. But I also feel like they need to start stitching the lore together a little bit better again. A second lore book has to be coming. Like, it has to be coming. Because the first one is like possibly, you know, you could consider it's one of, let's put it that way, the most sought after pieces of the backstory of Flesh and Blood. People just want a lore book, and I have one. It's great. I will never open it.
Fuck you.
Well, you know. I mean, I signed up for that, but where I think the story is going, it's hard to tell. They eventually have to start tying a bow on some of this stuff. I just don't know when that happens. I think that they really want to get the background of all the places sort of set, which is why we're going to see Bright Lights. We're going to learn about metrics, right? We're going to go to the Savage Lands eventually and get an idea of what's going on in the Savage Lands. Dusk Till Dawn was a lot about talking about Solana and the Monastery, because we really hadn't spent time there. If you really think about Outsiders, was the pits, was just, that's where we were. The setting was the pits. And then you think about Uprising, and to a degree Dynasty, you got Volcor. Like, you got to understand Volcor. So we still have some places to go. I think that's what they want to do before they tie everything together.
I want to say this. First, I think that you just answered what I was going to say with like where the story is going to go. It's just going to go to the other locations to start. I also would love just more lore, more content. I want a novel, a graphic novel, a animated show, you name it. Like, I just want it because
a movie.
Yeah, you know, I like the intellectual property. I like the characters. I like the world building they have done. But I also, in my greed, at least I do have an understanding, and I'll be honest, I have an appreciation for their caution, because whenever I do get the opportunity to talk to somebody from LSS and I bring this kind of stuff up, they talk about the fact that once you put something in writing and you publish it, you can't take it back. Right? Yep. So in this game, it is so important that like people fall in love with heroes, and heroes have this identity. And so the last thing you want to do is just do something that you think is an afterthought that goes against their identity or ruins something you want to do with them later or whatever. And you also have to kind of remember that for a long time, Magic basically didn't have lore and stuff. Like they just kind of got away on just shipping whatever.
Up
And then
until
once,
like Mirage Vision's Weatherlight. Yeah.
right. Weatherlight is, in my opinion, like the real point when lore started. I know that they were doing some before that, like a little bit, like, but to me that was more thematic than true lore.
Yeah.
Weatherlight
into
and the
Tempest
crew,
Stronghold Exodus.
yep,
Yeah.
that to me is like the birth of real MTG lore. But one of the other things you have to remember about Magic as well is that when they wanted to establish something new thematically or lore wise or whatever, they just hopped to a new plane, and they got away with that for decades. Basically, we've only got Wrath so far, so it's
and we
very
know there's
important.
a mirror one too.
I mean, yeah, but that's why I said so far, right? So them taking their time to go through each of these locations, but also make sure that they get them right, I think they feel the weight of that, and they don't want to, for the sake of like just mass producing things, rush that. I think that they want to build this world so that they have this like feeling of cohesion and then tell the stories in it. And right now we're just still so early in the game that we're in the world building phase. And I respect that. And I appreciate the fact that they don't just want to do it. They want it to be good. And that's why they take their time with it.
Yep. Agreed.
There's not going to be this giant, war where everybody dies and then you retcon it because the next set comes out in 2 weeks.
Shots fired. But second one is for Charmer. It has been mentioned in articles that there hasn't been a lot of LSS presence at prominent cons. When they are pushing the initial growth of the game, they hit up cons a lot in one form or another to pump up the game. Now it seems like they mainly show up to their own premier play events. Do you think this is a misstep or just the natural progression of the game? And what are things the company should do to make the community feel their presence more?
Well, it's a two-part question. So I'll answer the first part very bluntly. I love you, LSS, and I love a lot of the things you do, but I do think this is a misstep. I talked about this when I was at Gen Con. I kept saying, man, I really wish LSS was here one way, shape, or form or another. And you can say like it's the natural progression of how things go and that, maybe they're at a point where they don't need it, but I don't think that's necessarily the case because there is a lot of companies that are big and they still had big booths and big showings and reveals and whatever at Gen Con. I mean, you can say what you want about their games, but like Fantasy Flight Games is a notable company, right? They make a lot of stuff and they had multiple booths in a huge, area, the section of their demo area. And I'm not even just talking about the like Star Wars Unlimited stuff that I was there to cover. I mean, they had board game sections and miniatures and the whole nine. I mean, you look at Wizards of the Coast, right? They had a big old display for all of their Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Obviously, that's a big thing at Gen Con, but they had Magic stuff. And to that point, like not only did they have, their own booths, but there was enough push from the community and stuff that there were also still Magic vendors there, right? Like you could go and buy Magic singles at Gen Con. And part of that is because those vendors also know that there's going to be a presence by that company. And as a result of them being there, a presence of that community so they can go set up, right? Some of the things, so to answer your second question, some of the things that the community can do is we can just say to LSS, hey, we'd love to see you at these big premier conventions. And then when they show up, that is a signal to other members of the community, especially the vendors and stuff, that, hey, maybe it will be worth their time to also go to those events, right? There's no reason for, a Realm or a MinMax or, Kayfabe or any of those people to go to Gen Con specifically for Flesh and Blood and set up their booth if they don't even know if there's going to be an interest or whatever, right? But if LSS is going to be there and they're running demos or they're going to give out some promo or whatever, then even if it's just new players, they know they're going to have something to talk about and foot traffic and they can coordinate and whatever. So like that is a big part of it, but I do think it's a misstep. Big companies still had presence there for a reason. Coke spends millions and millions of dollars on advertising for a reason, right? It's not because they're trying to compete with a bigger company or find their market share. They're trying to retain it, right? They're fighting for it at all times. So, yeah, I think it's a miss.
Yeah, I would point out that One Piece, Magic, Pokemon, Dragon Ball,
My Hero Academia,
My
because my kid
Hero,
demoed it.
well, they all had actual tournaments at
Yeah.
Gen Con.
Pokemon had a tournament. Lorcana obviously had their tournaments. Like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but like that was another reason, part of the reason why that I was saying when I was there, like, man, I really wish LSS had a booth, was because one of the things I did that weekend was I was walking Stark around the convention center and I let him demo whatever games he thought was interesting. So we demoed obviously Star Wars and Lorcana, but we also demoed My Hero Academia and One Piece and some of the other card games. And he could have demoed Flesh and Blood if he wanted, right? Like, sparked some interest, but I had nowhere to do that. Like, I can teach him when we get home, but like, that's that kind of missed opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think you're right. I do believe that it doesn't have to be, it can be something as simple as you have an LSS booth with some LSS reps, a learn to play area that are giving promos, a learn to play area that gives out a promo, and run like a couple of events. It doesn't have to be a huge event. A Gen Con championship means a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it feels like at those bigger events that if you want to be part of the big kids table with TCGs, you've got to be there. That's just my 2 cents. But what do I know? Last set of questions. We got a 2-pack here from Big Lou. First one: if you could draft the Heroes of Wrath like it was the NFL draft, who would you draft to play what position? And bonus if you think they have a good showing at the Combine. For those of you who are not sports ballers, the Combine is basically the underwear Olympics that happen for the NFL, where they weigh, measure, and test the speeds and agilities of players coming out of college prior to drafting them.
It is the demonstration of abilities for the slave owners before the auction.
Oh my fucking God. That's
correct.
Ow. Oof.
I mean, tell me it's not a bunch of like rich white dudes going like, I would like to buy that one. Here is your $1 million.
You know, if Warren Sapp hadn't said it first, I think that we probably would have to cut that. But it's
listen,
been said.
like, you know, I started watching football in the 90s and I did not understand like regional love or affiliation. So as a result, the teams that I adopted in my youth and continue to follow are the Washington Commanders now, because they won the Super Bowl in '92, and that's when I was getting into football. And guess who else was good in the early '90s?
Cowboys.
The U. No, I mean, like
you were
when you go to
watching
the college side.
football.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So both, right? So like my pro team was Washington Commanders, and then the other is the U, right? So
Miami,
like
University
that's why
of Miami.
you said Warren Sapp. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly where I'm making this quote from because I'm.
Yeah, that's a lot of cocaine.
It explains a lot about me.
Yeah, sure does.
Not the cocaine, just
right. Who would you want? Like, we're not gonna go through the entire depth chart of a team, but who would you want as your quarterback?
Oh, that is, you know, legitimately that might be one of the tougher questions. My first thought was Chain, just because like you're gonna have probably the most options, but also he's a bit turnover prone as well.
Yeah.
Like Soul Shackle for 5 into hitting nothing is a lot like an interception.
It's basically Brett Favre.
Yeah. He's the high risk, high reward quarterback in that regard. If it's not Chain and I'm picking a quarterback, this also might be a bit of a shock. I think I'm going to go with Viserai.
Interesting. I think that I'm taking Lexi. Sort of a dink and dunk your way down the field. And a lot of underneath throws. Has a couple of chances for the deep shot.
Lexi and Dash were who I was going to draft at wide receiver. because they're
No,
both fast.
I want my wideouts to be Briar and probably Fi. Like Fi is my slot receiver.
Oh, see, to me, Briar is my middle linebacker. Like she is.
No.
Because she's so versatile, right? Like she can do it all, and so I want somebody who can cover the entire field.
I want my middle linebacker to be like. I probably would take, like, honestly, I would want the quarterback of my defense, which is usually going to be your middle linebacker or your strong safety. I would take Starbo in that position at middle linebacker because he does have the movement in all directions, can play the run, can play the pass, can rush on passing downs.
Yeah.
Like,
so he was going to be my strong safety, and then I had Briar and linebacker. Lexi and Dash would be my wide receivers. I'd Visceri as quarterback just because, again, of like that versatility but consistency combo, but like not to the same level of chain. If it's not Visceri, the other option that I would consider would be Kano. Like, yeah, he's brittle but explosive.
Yeah, I'm going to run a little bit of a traditional backfield.
Kano, I think Kano is my Michael Vick.
Yeah, except less dogfighting, but or more. I guess I don't know, but I think I'm gonna have to. My backfield is probably KO as my tailback. You know, a little bit brittle, a little bit shifty, but can hit the home run. Think like Barry Sanders type. But I'm gonna put Valda at fullback in front of him. I'm gonna play a traditional backfield and let bowling ball Valda just roll people, and that's also gonna be your goal line. Like, just hand the ball to Valda and she's gonna punch it in.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oldham was going to be on my offensive line.
Oh yeah, he's my center.
So it's, it's funny. I know that I have like Starvo in a spot, but I also, Bravo Showstopper is my tight end.
Reinar is my my rushing defensive end.
Yeah, I mean that makes 100% sense. That's an easy one. Yeah, the reason I had Showstopper as tight end is because Showstopper with his dominate ability is great at closing out games. It's just like going the field that's the problem. Mm-hmm. So you just get him, and he's also, I think he's got the size and build to be a good tight end.
Yeah, I think so. Levia's going to just play special teams.
No, there's no way she's oh no, you're right. In fact, not only is she special teams, she is specifically the punter.
She's the punter. Yeah, that makes sense too. All right. We're going to go on to the second part of this. I know we aren't really nationalists on this podcast. But what are your thoughts of one day seeing the Fab World Cup? The top 3 from each country compete in team competition through Seal Blitz and individual rounds. I think we can all agree any more ways to get more eyes on the game, especially when we can gather with others in the common language of great games, are welcome. What are your thoughts? Yes, please. The Magic World Cup was the best part of Magic. And honestly, the Magic World Cup is the reason we have Flesh and Blood in a lot of ways, because James White played in the Magic World Cup as part of Team New Zealand on multiple occasions. And that's part of what made him fall in love with competitive card gaming. The way that it used to work was you'd have cup qualifiers. And then the cup qualifiers would then, the winners of each cup qualifier would form the team along with the current national champion. And then I believe there was at-larges that were based on originally ELO. And then that formed the team. And then every member of the team had to play at least X number of the rounds or whatever to, and then that was how that worked. And then match points, then team from X1. It was always held the same weekend as individual worlds. Yes, please, more. Yeah, abso-fucking-lutely. Like, that is, I love that concept. And I think that it works great in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, I'm okay with the World Cup idea. I have some requirements, right? So don't hold it in Qatar. Don't here's what I'll say. Whether or not I want to do the World Cup idea depends on whether LSS thinks Taiwan is a country or not.
Oh boy.
How else can I get us in trouble on this particular episode?
There's a lot. there's a lot of things you can do here. But I'm not going to. I don't think that that's a great idea. There's some Hong Kong references you can make. Yeah, that gets a little sticky. We should probably just not.
So basically, a great idea. Let's do it.
No, I absolutely love it. Like, that's something that I would be super excited to do. So that's, yeah, I feel good about it. I got nothing else. I got to edit this thing and post it so Flake will get off my fucking dick about where episode.
I was going to say, where episode?
Bitch. It's a day late. Not even a day late. I'm going to have this up. Like, it'll still be Tuesday Central Time when this is published on the audio platforms. So just fuck, man. But that's what you get. That's the price of popularity, right? We just got to keep paying the piper. If you have any desire to support the show, you can actually join our Patreon at patreon.com/fleshandpod. The link is in the show notes. We're going to do a shout out right now to our executive producers on Up. So we have Andy, Kenny, Blaze. I love that name still. Blaze Storm. C-Dubs, Josh, Lance Goodthrust, Matt Two Tokes, Papa Mike, Alex, Philip, Rich, and Taylor. If you're interested in becoming, again, a patron of Flesh and Pod, patreon.com/fleshandpod. Jesus, that wasn't close. The other thing is we'll be we'll be doing our first ever FAP After Dark tomorrow. So if you're listening to this as it comes out or on August 30th, we'll be doing that at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, so 9:30 Eastern on August 30th. It's a non-recorded get-together type show that'll be done in our Discord channel, our Discord in our specific FAP After Dark channel that is locked to patrons only. So the $2 level gets you to listen to that as it happens. It'll be an utter shit show, I promise you. If you have any questions for the podcast, you can either get into our Discord. A link is in the show notes, or you can send us an email at fleshandpod@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us on Twitter. It's not X. I don't give a fuck. It's Twitter. But you can tweet at us at FleshPod. Darick, where can they find you?
In the dark. No longer, because I have power again. You can find me on Twitter at that charm3r, that charmer. Just Twitch and YouTube, Charmer. Find me in the Discord, etc., etc.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
If you need to get a hold of me personally,
I was trying really hard just to not do the Marshawn Lynch. Now that I'm on this football kick, I just wanted to be like,
I'm here so I don't get fined.
You know why I'm here.
You know why I'm here. I'm here so I don't get fined. Yeah, you can find me in the Discord pretty easily. Personally, I have my DMs open to anybody I share a server with. You can also find me on Twitter at Logan Peterson, but I also run all the Flesh and Pod socials, so it's like, either way, you're going to find me, better or worse, I guess. I don't think I have a whole lot else. You still have a couple of days to use the FAP5 discount code on the realmgames.com for 5% off your order, but that does end on August 31st. So get in there and get that sweet discount gravy. Is that how that is? Is discounts gravy?
No.
Oh. Is it more of a like a hollandaise?
It's like a Worcestershire.
Okay, no notes. We will talk to y'all next week. Bye.